English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are the news trending today. Trash collection resumes in Beirut after the Waste Management Ministerial Committee managed to agree on a preliminary solution to the garbage crisis. Prime Minister Tamam Slam postpones a much-anticipated cabinet session to tackle the government's decision-making mechanism. And NATO offers political support for Turkey's campaign against fighters in Syria and Iraq at a rare meeting in Brussels. Trash collection has resumed in Beirut after the Waste Management Ministerial Committee managed to agree on a preliminary solution to the garbage crisis. After an emergency meeting at the Grand Sarai, Environment Minister Mohamed Al-Mashnouk said the solution involves the immediate resumption of waste collection in Beirut, a balanced distribution of Beirut and Mount Lebanon's garbage to new locations, and financial incentives to municipalities. He said authorities will also continue to evaluate the tenders submitted by contractors, and the Council for Reconstruction and Development will establish an operations room to follow up on the plan's implementation. LBCI Television, meanwhile, said the agreement involves finding locations for 3 new landfills. Hundreds of protesters have rallied outside the government headquarters in downtown Beirut to call for sustainable long-term solutions to the country's garbage crisis. A small handful of the protesters threw eggs and water bottles toward the Grand Sarai, and others tipped over dumpsters as the police stood by and watched calmly. Later, an angry group that marched to Hamra chucked garbage at the car of Social Affairs Minister Rashid Darbaz near the Interior Ministry. The protest was organized by the newly established activist group URIC. Protesters said they were here to demand the toppling of the government because it is not doing its job, and called on fellow citizens to join the rallies to bring down the corrupt ruling class. A video taken by members of URIC posted to its Facebook page showed trucks dumping garbage in an open space. The activists said they were followed garbage trucks overnight to reveal where it was being dumped. In a caption under the video, the group said Ashrafiya's trash was being dumped in a bus parking lot in Sin el-Fil and in the Beirut River. A Salam Party leader, Roger Iddi, commented on the situation regarding the trash crisis.
We are living as crisis of government in Lebanon. It's, in fact, a crisis of a regime, a system, the design of a nation that has become a nation of many mentions, and it's a permanent civil war that is not declared, that doesn't turn always in the streets in blood, but it can turn in the streets, as we are seeing today, in dirt. Resolving the problems, everyone knows, because very few are really stupid in the leadership in Lebanon. They very well know that how to deal with waste management. Any embassy can provide them with every information they have in their own government, in their experience in waste management. Waste management is a great business. Waste management is also a best producer of energy for a reasonable cost. But the problem is that the waste management of a dysfunctioning nation is difficult to manage in a period where the whole Middle East is entering destabilization and the remaking of the Middle East. I think we should remake Lebanon according to any reasonable formula that can liquidate the confessional system in favor of a Swiss of the Middle East or many Singapores of the Middle East.
Today's protests were meant to coincide with a much-anticipated cabinet session, which Prime Minister Tamam Slam has postponed to Thursday. The session was supposed to tackle the government's decision-making mechanism. The cabinet was set to hold an urgent session this morning to discuss the system under which the cabinet can make decisions in light of the 14-month-old presidential vacuum. Prime Minister Tamam Slam reportedly came under pressure on Monday to postpone the crucial cabinet session to avert a looming confrontation with MP Michel Aoun's ministers over the controversial issue of the decision-making system and prevent the possible collapse of his embattled government. Free Patriotic Movement ministers have been pushing for a system that would prevent the executive body from passing any decrees without unanimous support. Salam has refused such a demand, saying it could allow any party to easily paralyze the cabinet. As the protests were underway, Salam discussed the trash crisis with Defense Minister Samir Muqbil. Defending Salam and Mashnu, Muqbil said the problem of the waste has been growing since 1993 when he served as Environment Minister during late Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri's government. Both also discussed the controversial issue of security appointments, which has threatened to take down the government. Muqbil said he briefed Salam on his meetings with political leaders. Addressing reporters, he said his tour of politicians isn't to tackle names, but to inform them about the situation and discuss their endeavors within the limits of the law to reach positive outcomes. Muqbil also met with Kata'ib Party leader Sami Jmail, Army Commander General Jean Ahwaji, Free Patriotic Movement leader MP Michel Aoun, and Progressive Socialist Party leader Walid Jumblat. Muqbil began consultations with political leaders on Monday ahead of Thursday's cabinet session scheduled to discuss the issue. And coming up next, slain leader Muammar Gaddafi's son Saif al-Islam is sentenced to death. That and more after the break. Welcome back. You're watching the English newscast. Saif al-Islam, the most prominent son of Libya's slain leader Muammar Gaddafi, has been sentenced to death by firing squad. He was sentenced in absentia in Tripoli along with 8 other senior members of the former regime, which was overthrown in 2011. The state prosecutor said they were accused of war crimes and suppressing peaceful protests during the revolution. The trial had started in April 2014 before fighting between rival factions resulted in a power struggle with 2 governments competing for authority, one based in the capital Tripoli and the other one in Tobruk in the east. Saif al-Islam has been held since 2011 by a former rebel group in Zintan that opposes the Tripoli government. NATO has offered political support for Turkey's campaign against fighters in Syria and Iraq at a rare meeting in Brussels, as Ankara said the alliance may have a duty to become more involved. The extraordinary meeting at the NATO headquarters is the 5th in the organization's 66-year history. It came just days after Ankara launched airstrikes targeting ISIL in Syria and Kurdish fighters in Iraq. The session was requested by Turkey under Article 4 of the treaty that founded the US-led alliance, which empowers its 28 member states to seek such consultations when they consider their territorial integrity, political independence, or security to be in jeopardy. Addressing alliance ambassadors at the start of the meeting, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said the military alliance stood in strong solidarity with its ally in Turkey. EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini was in Saudi Arabia to discuss the recent Iran nuclear deal with Iran's traditional rivals in the region. Speaking at a news conference next to Saudi Foreign Minister Adel Jubeir, Mogherini, who was heavily involved in negotiations, said it took a lot of hard work to reach the compromise. She also made it clear that part of the deal was aimed at tackling regional instability. Jubeir accused Iran of making threats against Riyadh's ally, Bahrain, which he said showed that the Islamic Republic was harboring hostile designs against its Middle Eastern neighbors. Closing a historic visit to Africa, U.S. President Barack Obama urged the continent's leaders to make their countries more attractive to foreign investment by cleaning up corruption, upholding democratic freedoms and the rule of law. Obama also said that democracy was not just about formal elections, urging African governments not to crack down on civil society. We apologize for these technical difficulties. Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak has sacked his deputy in a cabinet reshuffle after Muhyiddin Yassin called on the leader to explain a growing corruption scandal at Dapt Laden State Investment Fund, One Malaysia Development Berhad, known as 1MDB. Muhyiddin has said at the weekend the ruling coalition could lose the next election if Najib and others did not better manage issues stemming from the scandal at 1MDB, which has debts of more than $11 billion. Bernama news agency reported that Najib also sacked Attorney General Abdul Ghani Patai, who was involved in investigations into corruption allegations related to the Najib-linked company. The Prime Minister, who launched 1MDB in 2009, has vehemently denied any wrongdoing. South Korea says it is now virtually free of the deadly Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome known as the MERS virus, which killed 36 people and sickened nearly 200 since an outbreak was declared in May. Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-han told a government meeting the country has not seen any new MERS case in more than 3 weeks. More than 16,000 people had been isolated at hospitals and homes as the government attempted to thwart the spread of the disease, and the last person was lifted from quarantine on Monday. The South Korean Health Ministry says 12 people remain hospitalized under treatment for MERS, although only one was still testing positive for the virus. MERS was discovered in 2012, and the cases had been mostly centered in Saudi Arabia before the outbreak in South Korea. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a recap of our top stories. Trash collection resumes in Beirut after the Waste Management Ministerial Committee managed to agree on a preliminary solution to the garbage crisis. Prime Minister Temam Slam postpones a much-anticipated cabinet session to tackle the government's decision-making mechanism. And NATO offers political support for Turkey's campaign against fighters in Syria and Iraq at a rare meeting in Brussels. That's it from us here for today. I'm Linda Tamim, and I'll be back again tomorrow for more updates. Tune in.